This is the House of Hockey podcast,
where we talk about the game and the lifestyle.
We've got opinions as hockey fans, friends, and from the female perspective.
Welcome to our house.
Welcome to the House of Hockey podcast. This is episode 188. I'm one of your hosts, Ray. Breezy's on the LTIR. And today I'm doing something a little bit different. This is going to be a solo episode. And I wanted to do this because I am really passionate about the PWHL, the Professional Women's Hockey League. We've talked about it quite a bit here on this podcast. Before it was the PWHL, we interviewed players of the PHF, and I went to the first ever PWHL Game 5 final of their inaugural season to watch the first ever Walter Cup be raised. And it's something that I will always remember. And the odds of being able to actually see the Stanley Cup, for instance, be raised at a game, those odds are so low for fans like us. And I got to see that in this inaugural league that I just know over the years is going to grow and become something even bigger than it already is. So I want to tell you all about my experience there. But I also found that a lot of people that I have talked to don't know a whole lot about this league in general. There is some information out there, of course, if you Google it, but it's kind of all over the place in different pieces. And I wanted to sort of go through some of the main points that you would want to know as a fan, like where to watch. What are the differences in play? What are the differences off the ice? How long is the season? What are the teams? How much do the women make? What about a development league? Jerseys, like all of the stuff that we all have questions to. Because I went for a walk on the beach with my dog Ringo the day after the final. Minnesota won, by the way, in case you missed it. You probably didn't miss it because it was all over my Instagram feed. It should have been all over yours, but you might start following them now after you hear about all of the things that I want to tell you about. But I was walking on the beach wearing my PWHL finals sweatshirt, and I'm wearing it now in this video. And a gentleman stopped me and was like, "Hey, is that the PWHL?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, did you go to the game?" I did. And I started, of course, as I do when I talk to strangers, vomiting all of the facts and things that I think are really interesting about this league and sometimes that I do here on this podcast. And I realized he didn't know a whole lot. And it's because there just really isn't a lot of press. There's no ESPN highlights show. They're not showing highlights to my knowledge on ESPN. I mean, I don't watch ESPN on the regular, but there's not a whole lot yet for the league. There's not a whole lot of coverage. There is stuff on social media, but I wanted to kind of give you some of the nuts and bolts of this league. And hopefully you know a lot of these things. And if you don't, I hope that this will help you learn more about it and be more excited for the next season. Let's start with the league's name, the Professional Women's Hockey League. That's the PWHL. It's composed of the now defunct PWHPA and the PHF. A lot of acronyms. If you want to look it up and learn more about those, you can. But those leagues really helped pave the way to get us to where we are now. And the PWHPA partners are the Mark Walter Group and Billie Jean King Enterprises. Those three groups actually acquired the PHF and ended sort of the rift that was going on between those two leagues, because the PWHPA really wanted to have like livable wages and a lot of different things in their collective bargaining agreement with the players union to really be something that was substantial and could become successful and could also support the women in more of a full-time capacity, as opposed to it being a part-time job, which it was for many of the women who played in the PHF. What they were able to do in January of 2024, that's when the first ever season of the PWHL started. They basically put this league together in about 6 months, from draft, players, cities, barns, uniforms, like the whole thing. They played a 24-game season this year with six inaugural teams: Boston, Minneapolis, St. Paul, which is basically Team Minnesota, Montreal, New York, Ottawa, and Toronto. So 3 teams in the US, 3 in Canada. And they literally didn't have buildings to play in, equipment, just like the works. They started from scratch building this new league in such a short amount of time. And they really did do a pretty phenomenal job when you think about it. I know people, including myself, were super critical of it in the beginning, because for me, it was super important that we get it right, and get it right from the beginning to hook the fans like me and get us invested. And if certain things aren't in place for fans, it's really hard to want to spend our hard-earned money on this. It's not that we don't support the women, because we do. I just really wanted it to be amazing. And it really has been amazing. I went to a game during the regular season as well in Boston. They played New York, and I was thoroughly impressed. It was as high level of professional hockey from a fan's perspective that you would expect in like a minor league or even the NHL. Obviously, they don't have the money that the NHL has to be able to do all of the bells and whistles and things that we love. And the arenas are much smaller, but they really did a phenomenal job putting this together for the women, for us fans. And there are some differences, and I want to be really clear about this. Women's hockey is different than men's hockey, and that's not a bad thing. Okay? There is a slight difference in play, but the excitement of watching professional hockey is the core of what brings me joy going to these games, whether it's the ECHL, the AHL, or the NHL. So it exists as well in the PWHL, the excitement and love of the game. So what are the differences? Let's talk on the ice. They have a 3-2-1-0 point system. The terminations of penalties following a shorthanded goal, that's something unique that they do. They do best of 5 shootouts, and they have, of course, greater restrictions on body checking, but body checking is still allowed. And this is something that you can listen to interviews from the women players who all strongly advocated for body checking. They all wanted that to be allowed. And it is, and it happens, and I've seen it, and it's phenomenal to see it, because that's, of course, a part of the game us fans absolutely love. So those are some of the main things. Obviously, if you're really into the rules of the game and all of that, like, go do a deep dive, because there's obviously, of course, a whole rule book for this. But what else is interesting and different is that they're women, and women have this crazy capability to grow children in their bodies. Yeah. If you didn't know that. Okay. And 3 of the main stars in the league all had just had babies several months before the season started. And I have this on authority from Kendall Coyne Schofield's husband, who I spoke to at the final, because I wanted to know if this was true. And it's true. They can have a nanny on the road with them to help the players, who are moms also, take care of the kids up to a year old. So the people with newborns, the women players with newborns, can have a nanny on the team trip with them on the away games, at the home games. And this was actually something that the league decided to do, not even the players. The league was like, we have to do this for Kendall Coyne Schofield and Spooner. Like, we need to be able to, like, how are you going to ask them to go on the road without their newborn child who needs their mother in a lot of different ways, both physically, of course, and then emotionally. And I think this is the wave of the future with a lot of the professional sports, in allowing this to be part of the team and part of what it is, because we are different. Women are different. I don't see why this also couldn't be put in the NHL. Like, why can't the men be fathers as well on the road? I don't see why that couldn't be something that could happen. Like, babies need their parents and the moms, of course, need help, and so do the dads. Like, that's a team if you have that, right? Or the moms need their moms, or the other moms, like the part, you know what I'm saying? There are women who have female partners, and there are also women who have male partners in the PWHL. So being able to have this element is something that I think needs way more attention and press. And when I was talking to Kendall Coyne Schofield's husband, first of all, that was hilarious because I saw him and he had Drew, I think is their son's name, strapped to his chest. He can't be more than 6 months old. Okay, do the math. The league started in January. It's the end of May. Maybe 7 months. She like literally just had a baby and she's playing high level professional hockey and she won, but I digress. So I went up to her husband and I said, excuse me, are you Kendall Coyne's husband? And he's like, yeah. I said, I love your wife. I'm so grateful for her, helping make this league possible and everything she's done. And thank you for supporting her. And I'm just so grateful. And then I started asking him about the traveling with the kids on the road. And he was like, oh yeah, it's true. What other league does this? No other league does this. None. I can't name one. And I think this is such a unique element of this league and just supporting the women as people, like from a holistic point of view, from all of the elements that they bring. And I'm pretty sure Madison Packer, who plays for the New York team, also her two kids can travel with her and her wife. And you see them at the games, and I just think it's wonderful. And I'm excited to see what else this league does that sort of changes the way that the players get to be both the professional athlete and the personal human being that they are. Okay, let's talk about pay. We all know that women, especially women professional athletes, are severely underpaid. And we know all the reasons. I don't feel like that's the story I want to get into today. And it's not an argument that I want to have. It's just, I'm just going to give you some of the facts of where we're at currently with the PWHL. So they established an 8-year collective bargaining agreement with the players union. And each team has to sign at least 6 players to a minimum salary of $80,000 a season. And no more than 9 of the players can be paid the league minimum salary of $35,000. And the teams have to achieve an average salary of $55,000. And on top of this, the base and average salaries will all increase 3% per season over the next 8 years. So they will continue to get a raise. And then, of course, there are performance and team bonuses. And the championship winning team got a $63,000 about bonus for winning. But that's like split over the whole team. In the NHL, the Stanley Cup finalist earns $2.25 million, while the winner receives $3.75 million. So we're at quite a difference here in pay gap. But that's, of course, because this is a brand new league. Money is money. We're going to take the bonuses where we can get. But I just wanted you to know, like, where this league is at and what it means for these women to be doing this and playing at such a high level and getting paid so little to begin with. But we can only hope that bonuses go up and that the league can grow faster and then maybe we'll have a much bigger pay jump once that 8-year collective bargaining agreement expires. Something else that leads to this and is also a big challenge for the league right now is that there's no development league. Right? In the NHL, you've got the AHL and the ECHL, and you've got a couple other leagues that are around for the other players who want to keep playing at a high level and continue to strive to make it to the big league, to make it to the NHL. They have a place to go. They have a place to play and make money and keep their skill set at a very high level. We don't have a development league for the PWHL yet. And unfortunately, something that we'll probably see happen if the players don't get drafted is that they're going to be forced to retire because there isn't enough roster spots for this 6-team league. And you can't expand too quickly if you don't have the structure in place for the league. You can't just put 30 teams out there and hope that it works. That's not how it works. And I know that that is something that the PWHL is working really hard to try to figure out and even get some short-term solutions in place for the women. 167 eligible players officially declared for the draft for this coming year. This is record-breaking numbers, huge, and not all of them are going to have a place to play at a high level. And the only other option is to play in a recreational league. And I'm sure there aren't a whole lot of women's only recreational leagues. Not that they aren't used to already playing with the men, because most of them are, but it's a different game, of course, like I've already highlighted. So that's something that the league is working on to do. Okay, we have to talk about the jerseys. Not New Jersey, the jerseys the women are wearing. And because the league was started so quickly and they had such little time, they had filed trademarks for a bunch of names for all the teams. But I think due to a lot of fan criticism, they weren't super happy with some of the names that were chosen. And they went back to the drawing board and decided to launch the season without team names or team nicknames. And the jerseys they did debut got a lot of criticism because they're really plain. They're all the same. They have just the name of the state or the city across the front in a diagonal, and they have some different colorways. And I was super critical. I was like, this is ridiculous. We need a team name. It's your identity. It's what you cheer for. It's what the merch you want to buy. You need to have an identity to this team to be able to want to cheer for them. And I'm going to eat my words, though, because I got to tell you, the jerseys don't bother me anymore. After the season has gone through, it doesn't bother me. And knowing that we are actually getting team names and logos in August of 2024, and all of the jerseys are going to be designed by Bauer, gives me a little hope too. And that's also something really exciting. So mark your calendars, August 2024. Be ready for names and logos to be announced for the PWHL. But I think the biggest issue I had with the announcement of the jerseys initially was there really wasn't a whole lot of media and clarity on social media that these were temporary. Like, it was just like, these are the jerseys and these are the teams. And it was like, oh, forever? This is it? How long do we have this? This is what we've got? This is all we could come up with? And now that I think about it in hindsight, I'm going to be Miss Hindsight right now. I get it. And I just wish there had been a little bit more of like an asterisk or some sort of graphic that was put out there that just said that these were temporary, and we knew that after, but there was just such a little press about things like on the big scale that it was hard, and a lot of misinformation that was going around. But we got new jerseys and logos are coming in August, so I will have an opinion about whatever those team names actually are going to be. In-game experience. I went to, like I said, a regular season game. I saw Boston at home. They play like an hour and a half away from the city, which is tough for some fans to get to. Boston traffic is pretty terrible, but they played New York, and fans were chanting. Buildings almost sold out. They play at the Tsonga Center. It's 6,000 seat arena. Good food. They had a merch booth. Fans are chanting, "Let's go Boston," all game long. They have in-arena hosts. I know Minnesota has in-arena hosts. I'm pretty sure the other teams do as well. They do the in-arena giveaways with different signed autographs and whatever smaller sponsor things that they have. I know that will only continue to increase. Hopefully one day we'll be shooting a puck at center ice to win a car in the PWHL, but they're not there yet. But they do have all the things that you expect and would hope for. And the other challenge with the in-game experience was there was a lot of limited merch. And I know from experience that I wanted a purple shirt or sweatshirt for the league color, because the league color is this purple color. And I haven't yet made a decision on like which team I'm going to be supporting, because this is a really big decision for me. And I'm an anxious person. And growing up in Chicago, my only option was the Blackhawks for the NHL. And now that I have a free reign and I can choose any team I want, it's a little overwhelming to me to be able to pick one. And just because I live close to Boston right now, I'm not so sure. But anyway, that's where my brain's at, and I'm not going to bore you with my insane thought process on that. So either way, I wanted some purple merch, and they really didn't have a lot. And they partnered with one of my favorite brands for NHL gear, Line Change. But it's much more like hip, cool, and not color identifiable. Or, of course, we have no logos or anything yet for the PWHL. So I didn't buy any of that merch because I really just wanted something that didn't just say Boston on it. I wanted something that identified like in the traditional way, the league and the colors and stuff. So they didn't really have a whole lot of that during regular season. And when they did get it in stock, it sold out right away. But at the finals, I was able to get some purple gear, but does say finals on it, but I'm okay with that because it's got the year and the inaugural season, and I was there, so I obviously had to buy something. But I know they will be working on the merch big time for this upcoming 24-25 season. How do we watch the PWHL? What's incredible and gives no excuse to anybody not to be able to watch, is that they streamed every single game for free on YouTube. Everybody knows what YouTube is. They also aired games on broadcast television on TSN in Canada, and they also did it on several of the local channels in the US stations. We had record number of people attending the games. And I think this is something that was really, I don't think anybody really expected the turnout of fans and selling out the games in the way that they did and breaking so many records all season long with fan attendance. I mean, I think the league knew they were going to have a big turnout, but I don't know what their expectations were, but mine certainly weren't this. But there's such a revolution happening right now with female professional athletes and sports across the spectrum that we're craving this, and the fans are ready. Like we're here, we're on board, because in April of 2024, the PWHL Montreal and Toronto game drew 21,105 fans. That's more than some of the NHL arenas, like games, that regular season games, I'm sure are not always sold out. Of course, this is new and exciting, but It was the most attendees for a women's hockey game in world history ever. Just let that sink in. 21,000 fans watching women's professional hockey. It's a big deal. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, it's a big deal. What's an even bigger deal is the NHL has the Stanley Cup. So what does the PWHL have for their championship? They have the Walter Cup. And it was designed by Tiffany & Co., which is one of their sponsors. And I think the coolest part, and the women will get this, is that it travels in a Tiffany blue box, like a gigantic Tiffany blue box. And I think that is the coolest thing. And it's so on brand, and it's such a perfect match for the women and for the women's game. I'm like sort of obsessed with that. And I think that's the most amazing thing. And the trophy in size, you know, we saw pictures of it and it was kind of hard to tell. Like you can see the measurements, but until you really see it in person, it is a substantial size. I mean, it definitely looks bigger than the NBA trophy. It's definitely bigger than, I think, the Lombardi trophy in the NFL. I mean, it's big. It's obviously not as big as the Stanley Cup because that's the biggest trophy on the planet, but it is big in size, like more close to size to the Stanley Cup than it is anything else. And it's beautiful. And I got to see it be raised for the first time ever in person, just like hundreds of feet away. And it was beautiful. And they have keepers of the Walter Cup as well, just like they do in the NHL, where they have the keepers of the cup who take the cup around and travel with it. And it comes in a Tiffany blue box. It's so good. So it was named the Walter Cup for one of the founding families that I mentioned earlier who helped start the league. And they were just really big financial contributors to this league, basically. And it was Billie Jean King's idea to name it for them. And they were, of course, on the ice with the cup when they brought the cup out for the presentation. And the first person to get the cup from the winning team of the first ever inaugural PWHL championship final was Minnesota's own captain, legend, woman behind this league, Kendall Coyne Schofield. She raised the cup. She's a new mom, 6-month-ish old son. She had this idea to bring this league to life along with a lot of other people, but she's the one who gets a lot of the publicity for it. She went to Billie Jean King and said, how do we make this happen? Can you give me some advice? Boom, boom, boom. One thing happens to the next. Billie Jean's an investor. We have a league. We're starting tomorrow. Let's go. And she was the first person to hold the Walter Cup. And it was incredible. It brought tears to my eyes, honestly. It's not just because it's women, but I don't know about you when you watch the NHL Stanley Cup, even if your team doesn't win, I know I get emotional and teary-eyed for all of the guys out there because one team's lost and one team's won. And the range of emotions that we experience in that moment yo-yo between the two. And it is a lot to take in. And it was incredible to see. Also on Minnesota, worth noting, Grace Zumwinkle. She was a huge star on the team. And they also had the #1 draft pick, Taylor Heisey. And she won the MVP award. That was incredible to see. That whole game, while Minnesota actually they dominated this game. In game 4, there was an overturned goalie interference call that Minnesota could have won game 4 at home in Minnesota, but they won on the road in Boston, which is always so tough. And it's especially hard for this league where these players and their family and friends, of course, we're not at a place where these players can afford to like fly people out to come watch them win the Walter Cup, but they definitely had a strong showing of family and friends there to watch them win on the road. And I got to give it to the Boston fans. They were so classy when Boston lost. They definitely started the thank you Boston chants and chanting the goalie's name. And it was just unreal to be sitting in the stands and sitting in the lower bowl to watch the first ever Walter Cup be raised. and watch what these women have accomplished and what this league has accomplished in such a short amount of time. And I stayed for the whole thing because, this girl's not leaving. I was there early. I watched warm-ups. I got my merch. I went and talked to Kendall Coyne-Schofield's husband and Tessa Bonhomme from TSN and the Jocks and Jills podcast. And I was just on a high, and I've been recovering for several days. And so is my voice from all the cheering I was doing. But it was something that I don't think anybody will ever forget who was there. And I'm one of the luckiest and the lucky ones who get to say, oh yeah, I was there at the first ever inaugural Walter Cup finals and saw the Walter Cup be raised for the first time ever. Like, I will be telling this story until I am 85 years old in the old folks home. I'm going to be telling everybody there where I was in May of 2024. And anybody who will listen to me talk about the PWHL, they will get all of this earful that I just dropped for you, because I just am such a proponent for the talent and these women and the love of hockey and growing the sport. It's not just women. It's like being able to grow the sport that I love so much means a lot. And it's my community and it's my people. And I know it's your community and your people. And we are a rare breed hockey fans, and we have to stick together. So what's next? The draft is taking place in Minnesota in June for the next season. Teams will select 42 players, and the draft order is based on regular season standings. So New York will select first, the lowest to highest, right? So New York, Ottawa, Minnesota, Boston, Montreal, and Toronto. That's the order. And next season, we get 30 games, not 24. Venues might be changing for a couple of the teams. The league is working to try to find more permanent or at least stable homes for the teams. So expect some of those announcements. August, again, we get our logos and the new official jerseys from Bauer. I will be buying one. I will have to make a decision on supporting one team. So much for me to think about in the offseason for the PWHL. And they're going to do more games at neutral locations as well. So this season they hosted a game in Pittsburgh and one other place that's escaping me, but they did neutral sites. They also played in New Jersey. The New York team played a couple games at Prudential Center after the Devils were done, or when there was a break and there was room and they could get them in to the schedule. So stay tuned for that. Go follow the PWHL official on social media, pick a team, go watch the highlights, go back and watch the games on YouTube. I don't know if they're still there, but they probably are. There's highlights. Get invested. You won't be disappointed. It's hockey. It's the sport we love. And I love it. I'm a fan. I just got to pick a team. But thank you for listening to this episode of me basically rambling for way too long. 34 minutes. Jesus H. Christ. Who knew I could talk to myself and you for that long? But alas, there was a lot to say. And send this episode to people who don't know anything about the league, who don't know anything about women's hockey, or anybody who lives in one of the cities where they have a team. Send them this episode. Tell them, listen to this. You can get caught up on everything you need to know. And stay tuned, because obviously there will be more announcements. And I will be back next week with all of the NHL Stanley Cup final talk, because at that point we will have our 2 Stanley Cup final teams. We will know who is one step closer to hoisting the Stanley Cup, which brings me just as much excitement as the PWHL does. And I'll be back with a special guest co-host next week. Thanks for coming over to our House of Hockey podcast and hanging out with us. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode. And in the meantime, you can follow us on social media. Just look for House of Hockey podcast. We'll be back next week.